David, Oliver, how are you doing? How is your day?
Really good, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. I was looking at what we're gonna talk about today, what you're gonna talk about today, and I have a question before you actually start your presentation. Do you think that by next year my job might be taken over by AI and I will be left with an issue with feeding my cats, not having a job anymore?
Gosh, you going to go for that, David, or?
I'll let you go first.
I have to say, Sandra, it's we've got some exciting developments, but I certainly don't think you need to worry about anything like that. There's so much happening in this space, and it's moving really, really quickly. There's so much opportunity that I think that I don't know, maybe when you were taking photos years ago to go and get the blur and everything like that, you'd have to have a special camera with all the lenses, and now you can take a photo and go about your day, so quickly, yeah. And you'll be focused on sort of higher value tasks. I think a lot of this is about doing more of the grunt work, as it were, the things that aren't so interesting to people. I mean, there's probably whole occupations that aren't particularly interesting to folks, and AI is going to be chomping through our tax returns and all the rest of it with just as much joy as anything more exciting. So, no, I'm really excited about all the tools that are coming out, and it's hopefully making our lives a lot easier, even if they're going to be somewhat different, because it's going to be hard to uninvent some of this technology.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a case of developers embracing AI rather than AI necessarily taking over. And I was reading about automated taxis essentially hitting London next year. So it's going to be the first city in Europe that's going to have self-driving vehicles. And I think that's a real statement of intent in terms of AI starting to do sort of taking over some jobs, but I don't see how that's going to take over just yet. It's certainly going to take over a little bit, and I think we're going to have to embrace it, and sort of look forward to seeing the positive things that the AI can do for us.
Embrace it, adapt, and move forward, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. And there's plenty of really wonderful things that are sort of being developed at the moment, especially around healthcare. And I think most people would be really sympathetic to applying this sort of technology into those sort of areas, rather than trying to purposely disrupt areas that are important to people today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, we have people together with us on the live stream, so I'm guessing this is a good moment for me to disappear and leave you to whatever it is you had planned to talk about.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra. And I'd just like to welcome everyone on the stream, and thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be talking through eliminating waste and automation, or sort of on the back end of the little talk we were just doing just then. So I'll do some brief introductions. I'm going to talk briefly about one aspect of Lean Agile, a little bit about automation, and then we've got some case studies, a very straightforward, simple case study, and a more exciting, interesting case study that Oliver will be talking about, of course. So let me introduce myself and Oliver as well. I am David Mawer, lead delivery manager at Spirasoft. I've got 28 years in the industry. Starting out as a university undergraduate at Newcastle, working my way up through desktop and web development through to team leadership, and now working at Spirasoft. I am a certified Scrum Master. I've been practicing for over 10 years, and I'm really passionate about Agile and also sort of embracing building teams, developing colleagues, and bringing people along with the journey. Oliver, who's joining me, principal AI engineer, has over 20 years of track record, working in significant contributions in the public health, geospatial and transportation industries. He's often a lead developer on the projects we have here at Spirasoft. Absolutely loves a programming challenge and navigating complex data sets with AI and things like that. So that's a little bit about us. Sort of one thing that just to mention is a lot of people I think on the call will be familiar with Agile. Some people may be slightly less familiar with the concept of lean Agile. It is very, very similar. There's slight different. Well, one of the slight differences is there a big focus on eliminating waste. That's a real bugbear of mine in any kind of day-to-day life. So some examples that I've listed here: bugs, work, systems that aren't working as they're intended is clearly not a good thing. Waiting is I mean, how often do we find ourselves in queues waiting, and it gets frustrating. Transportation, it's necessary, but it does delay things. It's necessary from place to place. Unnecessary movements, walking when you don't need to, for example. Overproduction and inventory, having excess stock, it's never a good thing. Underutilized talents are people that have just not been able to realize their potential, and excess processing. Making sure that if something is fit for purpose, is that adequate, or does it need the extra bit on top? And what's interesting with these wastes is some of them are unavoidable. So things like waiting, it's inevitable that you're going to be waiting. I guess the nice thing here is, can you be doing other things whilst a process is waiting? So while you're waiting for process A to complete, can you work on process B? Can you kind of make a bit more efficient use of time, things like that? I'd be really keen on the comments, actually, if anyone's got any examples that they'd like to share. Please, let's make this an interactive session, and feel free to involve. So automation, why should I bother? Automation is really good. It improves efficiency and productivity because it means that process which are taking a long time can be changed to be faster. There's reduced chance of errors and reduced costs as well, because unfortunately humans make mistakes. Employees are more likely to be satisfied because all of the mundane and boring stuff can be done by automation. Project and process management is automated and a little bit better. Increased standardization and compliance around things like GDPR. You know that a programmed automation will be adhering to the compliance structure that you define. And of course, visibility and transparency. Everyone can see what's going on. A lot of people use automated testing as a good way of validating that their things are working, and they run the automation every night. It's a really clever way to optimize how you can work, and you can have that running overnight, so you can review the results first thing in the morning. You don't have to stress about kicking it off in the morning. One automation platform is the Microsoft Power Automate. I'm kind of referencing it here, as I suspect it's one that most people would have access to. It's a free download and install, and it's part of a software as a service as part of the Microsoft Power Platform, which includes Power Apps and Power BI. They're definitely worth checking out once you've had the review of this session. So a typical flow that you'd want to, a typical flow process that you'd want to automate, it's got three sections really. The trigger to start it off. This could be in the form of a shared directory, which is expecting a file. So a file lands, an email, or maybe an online form. All of those provide options for input as well. So the file could contain some data. Potentially the email may have some content in its body. The form may have some data in it as well. So you're actually able to provide some inputs as well as to start the process. Then you've got the business logic, the standardized process flow, how you want the process to work. And then, of course, there's got to be an output. So whether that's a file, an email, a text message, something else. I'm sure people online are probably thinking already about processes that they're doing. So do think of it in those stretches, because once you've done that, you can start relating to these sorts of things. The first case study, when we are in the process of doing some recruitment, we do need to collate some information to send to our HR department to issue the contracts. And this is a manual process at the moment. So what we have to do is collate all of the details, go to a shared folder where you download a template form, cut and paste the joiner details individually into the respective sections, open Outlook, create a new blank email, add the subject, add a email content, attach the form and send the email. And that's not a particularly difficult process, but the different parts can take up to about 10 minutes to do, particularly with interruptions. So we all have instant messages, emails, video calling facilities, things like that. Any of these can pop up in the middle of any of that process as well, which would sort of delay it happening. So how do we improve this? So we improve it by using the Microsoft Power Automate platform. So we've got Microsoft Forms, we've got Microsoft Word, and we've got Microsoft Outlook. So essentially, the form will send an API response behind the scenes over to a Microsoft Word recipient. The template, which has been predefined, a load of logic can be programmed to set particular variables. That can then create an object, which is an email, attach the word, and then fire it off. All that can now happen in less than 2 minutes. So there's a great focus here on streamlining and optimizing a very, very simple manual process. And I'd be really keen to hear on the chat if anyone's got any thoughts of any processes that they currently do that might be similar to this, that they would like consider potentially doing, some kind of process flow for. And that's my simple example. Now we've got a bit more excitement coming up. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Oliver to run through a slightly more in-depth discussion about processes and CVs. So Ollie, over to you.
Super, thank you, David. So just before we get into the example, which I'll show in a sec, I just thought it would be useful to highlight that we often categorize processes into deterministic processes or probabilistic, possibly stochastic processes. Yeah, and this is really because much of the software that we make has known inputs or tightly bound inputs and known outputs. So if you have a mathematical function, you know what the inputs are and you get a predictable output. And we write unit tests and all the rest of it to verify that those processes work. And that's really really useful and has underpinned much of the software that we've written, the cloud software, mobile phone software, etc. But these probabilistic processes, which have always been there, it's just that they've been tended to be rather niche for very specific problems, maybe an airline, maybe a recommendation system. This is where you can have the same input and get different outputs. So, for instance, maybe in a grocery store, you go and put in an apple, and some of the time it returns an image of an apple. And if you put that into the software, sometimes it comes back with an apple, and maybe it comes back sometimes with a mango. And that's just based on probability. Okay. And probably the key going forward is for us to work on those deterministic processes first, try and digitize them. But as things become more advanced, we're probably going to want to start to integrate some of these probabilistic processes. Yeah. And so going back to the grocery store example, you can imagine that you want a process that is deterministic. You're always going to pay the same amount, all your discounts will be included, but you will want to integrate that computer vision software that comes and presents the likely fruit candidate. At the moment, many people have to select the fruit that they're trying to weigh, but in the future, maybe the supermarket would be so confident in that process that they don't even ask the customer anymore, and they just weigh the fruit. So I think that's good for that, David. So if we move on to the next slide here, it's I'm sure others in this call will have a lot to say on the topic, but it's the developments in AI have been really quite remarkable. I'm sure many of us are feeling it, and it doesn't really matter whether you're a software engineer. Software engineers, have been producing a lot of these processes. They've been understanding the way that businesses work, and they've been translating that into well-tested software. But they're ultimately going to be under pressure to some extent, in the same way as maybe language translators. They were no doubt disrupted to some extent by the likes of Google Translate and other services. And so software developers will have to take that on board. We've got the other end, we've got business users. These are the folks that are often talking to software engineers and wanting to have those processes. I mean, these people are absolutely empowered, to start defining these processes and get those efficiencies without the overhead of necessarily talking to a specialist software engineer. And so Microsoft have worked really hard to create the Power Platform, which adheres to a lot of the regulation necessary to work in the legal sector, medical sector, and whatnot, such that users that may have been traditionally Microsoft Office users are now able to go and author those processes that can be used initially maybe to just automate the business, but will probably be integrated with AI at some point. Okay. And organizations too, they're seeing other businesses start to digitize these processes. They're hesitant generally. Many of the businesses that we've spoken to are hesitant about letting AI do too much, but they're quite happy at the moment for these deterministic processes that are well understood, defined maybe by humans that are overseeing the process, and maybe they're using AI to assist. They're quite happy with that because that's like an AI readiness piece. So at the moment, I would guess, but it's just a guess, we've probably got quite a few years of digitizing many of those processes. There's lots of analog processes out there that we can map onto a digital flow. Obviously, Microsoft have Power Automate, but there's a whole suite of other tools out there that do a similar job. And so folks will have to find what works for their particular organization. So if we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so I am going to show you shortly an example that does a resume CV transformation. So that is, we have staff members and they have their CV, and we would like, for instance, to read their CV and transform that into a consistent format that all of our engineers have. And so, similar to David's flow, we start off with a trigger. So people will go and upload the file, in this case to SharePoint. The process will then load the file, it'll pass it to the Power Automate AI connector, and the AI process will read the file. So in this case, it would be a PDF. And we use a prompt to ask it to output certain pieces of data. And then we have another step in our flow that retrieves the output from the AI in the structured format, okay? And we use that to go and connect onto an Azure process, which actually generates the CV. So the goal here is to read a PDF, get the AI to reason with it, provide the data necessary for an Azure process to work. And that Azure process, which was a deterministic process, was created, was authored, just like you would in Power Automate with AI. So although we're not using the creative aspect anymore, AI was used to accelerate that development. So if we go on to the next slide, okay. So just before I go into the demo, I'll just say a couple of comments on this. So the winners are going to probably be the managers, product owners on some of this, the folks that want to go and get things done, because this software, depending on the area, can really accelerate development, which is great, okay? But there are, there's a few challenges there. One of them is that the pace of development is really quite fast when you're using AI in some cases, yeah? And so you can end up in a situation where the folks working on it only have a sort of superficial understanding of the problem space. And I've likened it here to cramming before an exam, yeah? So at the moment in time, you've asked all the right questions and getting the results, but in a few months' time, do you really understand the process? Have you thought it through? So, using AI to accelerate things isn't without issue there. And also this need to actually understand the programming environment that folks often use. If you're using Power Automate, you can obviously avoid much of that, but if you're using other AI tools to actually generate code, you can get yourself into a situation where you know enough to be dangerous, but the AI tools at the moment aren't necessarily covering all aspects. And so you can imagine like access control is a concern, maybe the jurisdiction that the AI is working on, you've got a whole host of problems, yeah? So AI development is really, really good, but it's not without its challenges. So if you could move to the next one. Great. So within the software industry, it's quite interesting. I'd be keen to hear what your thoughts are on this, but I've certainly worked with a number of engineers that aren't so excited about AI for a number of reasons. If you're interested in solving the problems, working with AI can sometimes maybe take some of the fun out of working on a given problem, because now the AI is solving all that problem, and the person that's working with the AI is basically just reviewing the results. So it could be that we see, folks less interested in, maybe the syntax, the structure of the document, the abstraction, all that sort of thing, yeah. So we'll sort of see less of that, and those folks find it less enjoyable. But on the upside, folks that want that software, really want to use it, they're going to be absolutely enabled, and they're not going to be hindered by folks that want to dot the I's and cross the T's, as it were. They're going to get a result probably quite quick. It might not be the best result. And then they'll possibly, in the short term at least, be wanting to go to those folks that are, an expert in the subject and saying, my AI code or the process that was generated isn't quite doing what I want. Can you assist with that? And that's probably, we're at the moment very good for demos and everything like that. But when it comes to a production process, there's probably, we're probably some way away, depending on the sector that you're working on. So if we can go to the next slide, David, let's see. Yeah, this is just a quick visual before I show you the actual demo. Think of deterministic processes as like a cog. You rotate the one at the top, the bottom predictably moves. The probabilistic processes, in many ways when you're working with the AI, sometimes you get unbelievable results, and that's like, the beads that fall down from the top hit the pins, and some of them go all the way to the right, and those could be like the unbelievable results that you rarely get, but you smile and think, golly, how did it do that? Most of the results are sort of fairly ordinary, and folks are accepting of that. And sometimes the AI slot that people refer to, you could assume that the bucket on the bottom left is that. And this here is a Galton board, but it's basically these processes that we're going to have to learn and increasingly work with are akin to basically knocking golf balls towards a hole, and hopefully they're mostly okay, but we just got to have the ability to handle the outliers. And with the resume generator in a sec, we review all of that with humans at the moment. So the AI acceleration here is really just to go and read the document, transform it, and prepare it for a user as quickly as possible, so that they aren't wasting their time reading it needlessly. So if we go on to the next slide, David, let's see what we got here. Okay, so if one wanted a recipe to do this sort of stuff, we can use Power Automate as an example to digitize a process, and folks can do that regardless almost of ability fairly well, and get predictable outputs. The next step is to, with some consideration, see where AI can assist, and there's certain problems that are very hard for us to write, as humans, to write processes to go and solve. I mean, 20 years ago, it'd be very difficult for me to write some software to work out what's an apple, what's an orange, and all the rest of it. But this red box, by and large, represents AI at the moment, so you can put an AI process in there. Next slide, if you don't mind, David. Okay, I think I'm going to stop. We're going to possibly skip that. I'll say a small comment, and that is, these AI processes, we are able to toggle the amount of creativity, as it were. So, for instance, if you're processing documents and you want JSON or XML, you don't really want it to have a load of creativity such that the document's totally different and it's using a different markup or something. You don't want that. So we can adjust the temperature down to 0, or if you want super creativity in Gemini here, which is from Google, you can increase that. But I don't think we've got time for that. I'm not sure this is actually going to work, but anyway, I have got an image, but I haven't got it on the slide. I think most people can consider what's going on is almost like an onion, where at its core, we are starting to build up and have been developing a load of business processes to modernize all manner of businesses. And as we want more and more AI, in the short term, we'll want to control the AI. There are very few businesses that are very happy with AI doing too much at the moment. But if they can only work, for instance, within the bounds of, in the case of the examples today, Power Automate, then we can kind of control what they can actually do because if it's scoped to only those flows, well, it can only do whatever the flows are doing, and those flows can ensure that the process is acting in accordance with what it can and can't do. I'm not sure if that video will play, David, but if it doesn't, I think we can probably move on to, yeah, okay, we can come back to that in a sec. So can I share my screen? Is that possible? We got, fabulous, thank you. So I will just go through and just briefly show you what's going on. I will, I think, start here. I ran it just before this call. But what we have gone and done relatively quickly, and we've made quite a few processes, but it's interesting to see the ones that folks seem to really, take up really, really well and nicely. This one was something that we've really produced within a couple of days, I guess, the first draft, but then we sort of refined it. So what we're doing here is we've got a couple of upload folders because we've got different resume formats for different regions of the world. And the goal here is for folks to be able to upload a resume, and I've got a John Doe resume there, which I'll show you. It's just here. So this is just something that I downloaded off the internet, and unfortunately it's not software engineering related, but anyway, there is a resume there. We upload it to SharePoint, and what the user, often in the HR role, wants is under their name, they want the output. And so within a minute, because we only trigger the process every minute, it transforms that resume into a document that has consistent branding. Okay? And the Mawer is showing you a PDF, but we export a Word document so that a human can go and review the document and alter it as appropriate. So I have got this demo environment that I set up, and I'll just step through it briefly so you can all see here. So we have a SharePoint location, we have the documents library, and in this case, this is specifically for the UK folder. Okay, and what we're doing here is we've got a step where it's a trigger when a file is created in this location, right? This is going to fire. Then we're going to go and get the file contents, which folks going to say as the binary. That's what we want to go and get. And we just check whether it's a PDF because the AIs love image data, as it were. If it's other data, then it may find it more challenging to go and work through it. So PDF is great, and PNG and all the rest of it is really good. And we go and pass it to this child process, okay? And the second process here, okay? You can see I've got a variable here to say whether it's successful. I go and create, we don't need to worry about that, that's still my demo, but basically we ensure that the folder here is created for the user, because anyone in the company can potentially upload to one of these locations. We go and create the folder there. And this is one of many iterations. This is not obviously the actual process that we're using live, but it's one that I managed to get done relatively quickly. So we go and take the file content there, and we have a series of different things that we're going to try and do. So we have our prompts here. You can see this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take that image data, transform it into text, and then we're going to use, in this case, a cheaper AI, as it were, to go and do some more advanced reasoning on here. And we've had, this process is actually quite old, and we've had varying levels of success, but by and large, we found that rather than try and produce what is in that document in one go, it was actually easier just to fragment it so that the prompts were targeted to specific regions of the document. So in this case here, this one is about the summary, summary statement, personal profile. This prompt here is by and large about the experience of the individual. This prompt here is around the skills, and then there's some other things here that we go and put in. And so we're running multiple processes there. And then once we've run all those processes and got the results, okay, our goal here is ultimately to go and transform that into some JSON, okay, like this. So we end up with full name, job title, location, experience, languages, etc. Okay. We call an HTTP endpoint, which is our Azure function. We pass in those processes. That function is spun up whenever it's needed. So there is a cost, but it's close to zero for doing that. We go and create the docx file name, and we then go and create the file. So that is, we've got a process here on Azure that returns the docx file, and then we go and save it in SharePoint, which is what you see here. So I can do a seeing is believing, perhaps. I've got another resume process over here, our global one, or maybe I'll delete this one, and I'll do that again. But what I'll do, so just, excuse me one sec, and I'll just do this. But then we'll be able to see that running in just a moment. So I think I'm going to click on this one here. I just click on details. And this is the trigger process for that. We'll come back to that in a sec. And I might actually go onto this one here. And just whilst that's running, I'll just pull up a little something over here, because Microsoft are encouraging us basically to associate our cost with these processes that we're running. So we can see the process is running here. So this is generating that CV, but I'll show you, but just whilst we're here. So an author that goes and creates this process can enable the savings there, okay? And you can work out here, you can use a ballpark figure, how long would it take someone to go and do it? And we think that 30 minutes is a reasonable time for someone to go through a CV and transform it into something that represents the company. So we can go and do that. You can also put a monetary figure against it, and I'm not sure what's appropriate to be putting in here, but I'll go with 30. And so when we do that, it means that as we run these processes, you're about to start to see how much time you've saved by running this process, and potentially how much money you've saved. I think it's probably a good story there with respect to as folks upskill to use these sorts of tools, and this is nothing new. We've had these sorts of tools for a long time, but what is different is that AI is enabling more and more people to go and author these processes, and if people can go and justify, the investment in the time taken to go and make the process, and we can go and calculate how much money has been saved potentially, and how much time. That's a reason to continue the automation process. So you can see 2 minutes ago, the global one has completed. And if I go back into my folder over here under completed, there we go. And we've got the global template here, which is slightly different. if folks were particularly interested in this, I could talk to them at length, but this is a slightly different format, and this is where we and others are learning by adopting these AI tools and processes and adapting our output. So the UK format is very tolerant to varied inputs, whereas this document here is more structured and would have been quite appropriate for like a relational database, something where we have tight control over the inputs. But what we'll see actually is that when you haven't got the quality of the data going in, and that's often the case with resumes where everyone's got a slightly different format and showing slightly different information, the AI ultimately just has to guess, hallucinate, if you like, and what to go and fill. And that's where it can become more burdensome to go and actually to run a legacy process with the AI. It's often in one's interest to evaluate what the AI can do and possibly compromise in the output. So in this case here, you can see that we've got the repeated dates, repeated role would appear. This is somewhat different, but this is very common. This is appropriate for our particular need. It's just something to be aware of. That date, we're good on the demo, unless anyone had any thoughts or questions immediately there.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Ollie, Sandra, is there any questions?
I was focusing on taking out the screen sharing and forgot to come back to you, gentlemen. Yes, there was a question that I received and I will pop it on the screen right now. Do you want me to read it out loud to you? Do you guys, can you see it? Can you read it and maybe give an answer while we see if other questions come up?
Yes, we can certainly answer. I guess
interesting.
Oliver will have a take on it as well. AI is still learning, isn't it? So the more results and feedback that you provide the engines, the better it is in terms of getting accurate results. So often with these, it's a certain degree of training involved with the AI, and practice makes perfect, doesn't it? It's a human trait. It's also an AI trait. So the more runs that you do with it, the more likely you are to get the results that you're hoping for. Ollie, I don't know, yourself?
Well, okay. So I think my general comment on all of this is that I think it's really important that folks start their journey, if it's all possible. Yeah. So if you're an Office user, start to use the tools and start to see the limitations. If you're writing software, I'd really encourage you to start to use those AI tools, because you'll start to form your own thoughts on that, and you'll be able to see that the different tech companies, they're subtly competing in slightly different areas often. So what I'd say to you is that at the moment, if you're writing software, Google's Gemini, which is often used heavily and relatively low cost, and Grok, I'm not getting as good results, predictable results, as I would with Claude, for example. Yeah. So Claude is actually quite expensive compared with some of those other solutions. So I often use myself Gemini to go and have like a big context window and do some reasoning. But when it actually comes to doing the work, because I'm quite familiar with what I'm trying to do and the limitations of the different AIs out there, I'm picking the AI based on its likely ability to be able to solve it well. And if you're transforming, small amounts of data, I'm using demo data for the most part. I would use Claude to reason with that. It gives really good results at the moment, and I hope that we'll see better results with the other AIs in the coming months. Yeah, but it's got the edge, and it's changing all the time. So yeah, super.
Great. And let me go to another question. I don't know what is happening, but this is the only way I can bring them up to you. It is related, the question is related to the cost.
Yeah,
of automation.
This is a good point, isn't it? So there's always going to be a certain amount of investment required to perform the automation. What I would say is it's likely that you'll get 100 times back your return on investment in terms of using the process a lot. So the CV converter that Oliver demonstrated, I know from a fact that my colleagues have saved hours as a result of having to not trawl through and do that as a manual, laborious process. And we've had some really fantastic feedback from them as well. So I think there's a certain amount of training to upskill the person in the automation platform of choice, of course. But once those skills are acquired, it does pay back in spades. But it's a great question.
So basically, we're going back to pretty much the same thing that Oliver mentioned, which is that we need training and we need preparation.
Focus on the low-hanging fruit, because I think David and I have done some more advanced things, and they weren't as popular as the easier things, which is quite surprising. Yeah. So make a start, do the easy things first, and yeah, there is a lot of benefit to being able to understand those processes yourself, rather than, for instance, just procuring, a process that does it. Yeah.
And I have one more question for you, gentlemen, and I am guessing that this one is related to the specific demo that you did, Oliver. Would this be an interesting example for writing offers? And I will take a lucky guess to think that it's a recruitment offers.
Yeah, absolutely. It could certainly be adopted for that. I'm sure folks could get up to mischief by using AI like this, but yeah, absolutely, it could assist greatly. But I think we just got to be realistic at the moment that the limitations of it, at the moment, around like the context size, so that's like how much data is able to go and reason on, and the quality of the output. So I think it's probably fair to say that going forward, we're going to have multiple AIs, like a team working on the problem. And so in the case of writing offers, it may be in the short term best to go and try and work out certain sections, and as I just demonstrated earlier, break up the problem so that you can focus on a specific part. But as the context window size increases and the quality of the output increases, you may be able to do more with less work. And obviously there is some work with that fragmentation. It's just a necessary thing often at the moment.
I guess any repeatable process is a candidate for the things that we've been talking about in any aspect. And there's always more that can be done, and there's got to be a little trade-off, I guess, between going completely berserk or trying to automate everything and having a little bit of practicality. But yeah, there's other things other thoughts that I've got already around other suggestions, things that we can do. And I hope that this talk has kind of inspired listeners and viewers to think about their own processes outside of work as well. It doesn't have to be just restricted to your daytime. Think of something that you do repeatedly at home, and how can you streamline that? And how can you use AI to cook your food? That's a whole different talk.
Can't necessarily cook your food, but it can make you a good suggestion of a dinner and maybe even the grocery list. and everything. And to be honest, the best thing and my takeaway from today's encounter is that I will be using AI for my tax returns because I'm really bad with math. So why not have somebody else do it?
Yeah, find those boring, mundane tasks and automate them because no one wants to do those.
With that manual review at the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gentlemen, there are no more questions, at least for now. The event will remain open and the registration recording of our talk today will remain on LinkedIn. So if there are any questions along the line for somebody listening to our recording, I said that 5 times already, sorry. They can drop the question in the comments and we will just review them and get back with answers. That being said, I want to thank everybody who tuned in to listen to you guys today, and especially thank you to you two for hosting today's webinar.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Wishing everybody a beautiful day and see you next time.
Super. Take care.
Bye-bye.